Welcome everybody, and this is your host today, and I'm the founder of D Health and Fitness, the creator of Naked Fit online program, and author of book Happy Naked, a straightforward 5 cents guide to loving the skin you're in and feeling that energy in every area of your life. I discovered in the last years that one of my missions in life is to bring to light taboo conversations, the naked truth, and all through raw stories. In many situations, our journey in life is not always full of pretty or rewarding stories. Most time is full of guilt, shame, and fear. As a result of that, we choose to hide our stories in order to hide that we might not be as successful as we would like to be. And life is not as pretty as we always show in social media, right? In every show, I bring people that are open and of course are saying hell yes to share their stories. And it's not edited, okay? I will be sharing absolutely everything that we are talking about today here, and in every story that you see in my show is not edited at all. Through the years, I have been judged for my actions and mostly questioned why I've done what I have done. So in the last 8 years, I had a massive journey of evolution and growth that allowed me to connect with amazing people that also has grown from their life experiences and also willing to share to the world in order to elevate your vibration and transmute all that stuff to good health, awesome relationships, amazing sex, of course, and more balanced lifestyle. So whether you are divorced, a single man, a single mom, a single dad, entrepreneur, hard worker, employee, or being in jail, I want to let you know today that you're not alone. We're here for you. Your comments and feedback are 100% welcome. Please share what you think, what you feel, and how this empower you and encourage you to be a better person, right? How this impacted your life as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Misty Wynn, right? We have connected for many years after many friends that we have in common, and also have been friends over social media for a while. And we noticed, I personally noticed, that we share some of the same core values.
Yes.
And we're also fighting together for the same cause. So here's Misty Wynn, whose story is very interesting, and it brought her from prison to philanthropy, and now into health and wellness of mind, body, and spirit. You can follow along her on Black Sheep White Wings podcast or sign up on mistywynn.com for all her socials and notifications. So welcome, and thank you for saying hell yes to this.
Thank you so much for having me, Dee. I'm super excited. I was happy to say hell yes, and I'm happy to share my story. Hopefully it can inspire others of how they can better the world around them by bettering themselves first.
Awesome. And thank you very much. Because I offer you to even do this anonymously, right? Yeah. And you're like, no, I want to share my face. I want to share my name.
Yeah.
And I think that is very empowering and encouraging, because I have interviewed people that we actually have to set it anonymously, because one of them is she has a case in court because her husband, hopefully her ex-husband, right, and has been sexually abusing her, right?
Yeah, legal issues can be sticky.
Yes.
So I understand.
Yeah, so that
privacy.
Exactly, totally. So that's why I also want to make sure that I respect that part, and still sharing this story. So yeah. Thank you. So tell us about you. Okay, I'm curious to know, and because it is very interesting to say that is from prison to philanthropy, right? So let's start with well, you can share whatever you want. That's one thing I want to say. You share whatever you want, whether how you got in prison, And I think the most important thing is what was your lesson out of that experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
you bet. So yeah, we've known each other for a while, and going back and forth, it's going to be interesting to get into the next level of knowing each other a little bit deeper. So I'm super excited about learning about all the stuff that you're doing and helping wellness and like the naked truth and these conversations. So I'm more than happy to share my story. It's one that brought me to 5 years in prison. Back in 2008 was when I was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. And I was one of those kids who was like an overachiever to the point where I just didn't bother going to school and doing stuff because I was bored. I would go out and get into trouble with my friends because it was more interesting, because school work was easy to me and I could just go into class and write the test and pass. And I didn't have to go to any of the classes. So I found myself in, at the smoking doors, smoking weed, dropping classes to go for long, long drives and like smoke weed with my friends. And I thought it was pretty cool. And that sort of went from marijuana to selling marijuana. And then as things evolved and I became an adult, I found myself in places where I was being opened up to the world of narcotics and dealing in narcotics. So that was quite a few years of my life. And I'm not going to go into all of the ins and outs of that, but you will hear a lot about it in my actual podcast. I will be going into a lot more details and bringing on other guests who I was either, actively engaging in criminal subculture with back then, who were all good now, or who I might have been cellmates with or in an institution with in prison. So they'll all be guests on my podcast, and I won't go into those details right now, but there I was, 4.5 years, and there was lots of lessons to be learned. Once I got out of prison, I was really, really lucky to find a mentor that meant something to me. So that's one of the main things and the first steps that I urge people to do. It doesn't matter who it is, if it's your uncle or if it's like an entrepreneur business person that you look up to, or, your grandma, or whatever it is, even like a little nephew that you just adore and love. Find someone, find a community member outside yourself to look up to and to do your best for. And that's the first step. We all want to start doing the best for ourselves. But when we step outside of ourselves and we have somebody outside of ourselves that we can be accountable to, it would hurt us to hurt them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I needed. I needed to feel hurt that I was hurting somebody.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that for the first few years of my life as an adult going through prison and everything like that, because your family's always going to love you.
Yes, of course.
Not everybody's family and
not every member, right?
Not everybody's family. So I was blessed that my mom was always going to love me. Like I was bad, but in her eyes I was inherently good and I could do no wrong. Yeah. Even when I was doing wrong, to the point almost of it being enabling. So I found an outside person to look up to that I would be hurt if I lost their friendship. Yeah. I would be sad if I lost their support. So I started building that community around me. Wow. And it was that person whom I would think of when people would come back to me in years down the road. They're like, oh, Misty, we've got a great job opportunity for you. Wow. Really? Oh, yeah. What would my mentor say? If I got in trouble again, I'd probably not have him in my life anymore, right? Yeah, yeah. So I literally, in the first while, when I wasn't strong enough to flex my muscle for myself of holding back and not engaging in previous habits, I utilized an outside support, an outside mentor. No, so that was really important for me in the beginning, for sure.
Yeah, and I can totally see that because I have, when I went to college, I became good friend with this guy. And so back in the days, and I'm sure it's still on, but now it's different. For us Venezuelans, being a mule was a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because on each trip, I'm talking about mid-90s, okay? So because it was very easy, it wasn't as popular as it is today, right? So nobody will get caught as often yet. And of course, I knew about that kind of jobs, right? And for me, I gotta say that being back home, we're exposed to that all the time, right? It is very, very cheap. It's not like here that it can cost, way more. So drugs are accessible everywhere and they're quite cheap. But the one thing I personally was afraid of is to get to jail. Because there is one thing that you never want to get yourself into in Venezuela, and it's in jail. That is definitely like you probably, somebody like me or like you, we're mid-class, we're workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that getting in that environment, we're not going to survive, honestly. That's the truth. Is you become really bad.
On top of that,
or yeah, exactly. So so you become very bad, or you basically
I became bad, yeah.
right? Exactly.
Yes.
Right?
You definitely, you harden or you crumble because you were soft.
Yes, exactly. And what it turned out is my friend in college, he disappeared for a period of time. We became good friends, and I was in good relationship with his mom. And he disappeared. I didn't know what it was. Sometime he appeared. He came back to school, and I'm like, dude, what's happening? And he tells me the whole story, and he ended up getting caught, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up being in jail. Mm-hmm. But because he made so much money on those trips, because it was about 10,000 US on each trip, which is a lot of money for us back home when you do the exchange. Yeah. So he, like 5 trips, he's basically a millionaire for life, like set. And so he got caught anyway. So he spent like whatever time, and then he got out. He spent all the money that he made through the trips just to stay safe in jail. Mm-hmm. And being able to do all the stuff with his file, like just basically disappeared. Mm-hmm. His file,
courthouse
and then
lawyers.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And years later, after I moved to Canada, he ended up moving to Spain. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, at this point, he already have 2 kids. He's married. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, dude, are you good now? And it goes back to exactly what you're saying. Right. And he said, it's so tough. It's so tough to stay out.
Recidivism rate is skyrocketed through the roof. I talked to my lawyer just the other day about speaking about my story lately. He said he wants to review it all the time to make sure that I don't have to go back to court for other stuff. And he said, Misty, I will be on your podcast, my lawyer said. He said, because I'm so proud of you. He's like, you were literally like one out of every single one of my clients who managed to get out of the criminal system and not only survive, but thrive and hopefully become like a success. I mean, I'm a success already in my chosen career path, but like to be a success for me is to impact people's lives and change them for the better. So that's when now it's been time enough. It's been almost a decade since it's been over a decade since my first sentence, and it's been 7 years since my release. So for me, it was time to actually be able to tell my story. They don't do in Canada that 7-year, what is it called? You can't be charged for something after 7 years.
Oh, I see.
Something. They don't do that in Canada. So I talked to my lawyer about that the other day. He's like, actually, statute of limitations. There's no statute of limitations in Canada. They can charge you. They can charge you if they want to. Like,
oh, wow.
20 years down the road.
Yeah. No. And it is definitely interesting because it is, I think the biggest thing it is, which is exactly what you're talking about, it is integration. Right?
Yeah, reintegration into society is a slippery slope and a tricky subject. And I was just talking to a friend of mine, Maher, you know,
Yeah.
and my dear friend, and we had a good conversation after my amazing massage from yesterday. And this subject came up because reintegration for me, I went to prison 3 times. My first sentence was 4.5 years, and then I got out on parole after a year and a half. I was on parole for 2 years, and during that 2 years, 6 months I stayed clean of trafficking narcotics, and after 6 months I receded back into what I knew, how to survive.
Yeah.
And I did that for a year and a half successfully, you know, getting away with it for a little while, but you can only maintain that for so long. I was still on parole, and I eventually did catch a charge and go back. At that point in time, I had to finish my 4.5 years, and I had a new charge and was looking at another sentence of 12 to 14 years.
Wow.
So I'm going back to prison, and I don't have a release date.
Yeah.
Because I got to finish my 4.5, and I'm looking at another 12 to 14, and I'm crushed.
Yeah. How old were you?
I was 21 years old when I got my first 4.5 years. I turned 22 in prison. I turned 24 or 5 in prison, I think as well.
When you started becoming an adult.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. When you start becoming an adult, the beginning of my adult years were spent in prison or like on the streets. On the streets. So I went back to prison. I went 3 times, you know, and the whole, I'm not going to get into
the whole learning lesson. I don't think it took you a few trips.
I'm proof that you can screw it up again and again and again, and you just have to get back up and try it again, because it's not in your failures. It's in what you've learned from your failures. So the first time I failed, I learned that I cannot slip back and try it again. I'm not that untouchable. I'm not that smart. I'm not that great. I'm not above the law. So my first lesson was like, I learned that I can't go back. Now my second lesson, when I was out for the second time, I got out on Court of Queen's Bench bail. They didn't want to let me out after that 4.5 years, but my lawyer fought and fought and fought. He took it from provincial to federal and took it to Court of Queen's Bench. And eventually it said, okay, we'll let you out after your 4.5 years is done, and we will put you on 24-hour house arrest. Okay. So I'm out after my second major stretch, and I'm going to work every single day, cutting hair at my mom's hair salon. I've got my license and everything that I got while I was on parole, and I'm actually doing it. I'm like, I learned my first lesson. I can't deal drugs. I'm gonna cut hair. I'm gonna start a business. I'm gonna start my career, and I'm gonna excel. And a year into that, my court date was coming up. It was around the corner, like a month or 2 or 3 or something away. And I'm just cutting hair at the hair salon. And this is how crazy the system is set up for you. I had to sign in at the Okotoks RCMP office every single week, go in and physically sign in every single week. Sometimes I'm outside in the cold after hours, like on the phone, like you pick up the phone, you wait for that. You're standing outside there for 15 minutes, sometimes half an hour, sometimes for somebody to come and let you in to sign in. It's hectic. They're taking so much of your time. So I'm signing in every single week. I've got a parole officer. Well, now I have probation officer because I was off parole. There's a difference between these things. Okay. Not going to explain them all, but if you know, you know. So I'm sitting here signing in with the RCMP every week. I've got my probation officer every 2 weeks, and then I've got court dates like once every eventually they just throw more on you. So sometimes I had like 2 court dates a week. Wow. Sometimes I didn't have a court date for 2 weeks, and here I am going to work. The courthouse is 4 blocks to my west from where I'm standing cutting hair at work. And I just forgot that I had a court date. I was so overwhelmed, and I'm a high functioning human being. I was going to work, I was doing everything, I had learned my lesson, but I just forgot. Simple, plain mistake. Honest too. And a police officer comes and walks into the hair salon while I'm cutting hair. I still remember that that guy who I was cutting his hair, I seen him in the hair salon a little while ago. I'm like, I got to have a conversation with you sometime soon because that was crazy. And the police officer comes to the front of the hair salon and she comes and approaches me. I'm the first station in the salon and she's like all geared up and everything. And she's like, Misty, I'm sorry, but finish up your haircut and then come with me. You're under arrest for failure to appear in court. I don't know how well I cut that guy's hair after that. But here I am trying my best at work, learning my first lesson and honest mistake. And they're hauling me off to jail. Well, how defeating is it for you to know that you have to go stand in front of a judge and look at a second offense that they're planning on giving you 12 to 14 years, and you're in handcuffs and shackles behind the bars instead of in a suit behind the stand, going to your job every single day. So at that point in time, boom, third time in prison, third trip around, right? So I was like, what am I missing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's where you really sit and think, like, what was I missing? Like, I tried.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what I was missing, Dee? I was missing my spiritual practice on the outside world, despite all of the distractions and responsibilities and problems and successes and celebrations. When I was in prison, I was actively engaging in whatever spirituality I was interested in. I studied every single one.
Yeah.
I read all of the books. I've been to all of the different churches, the mosques, the temples, the everything. I did everything. I studied all the religions. I'm such a religion buff nerd into all of that because I wanted to know, like, why do people follow religions? Why is there like an emphasis on spirit in the world? So in prison, I would practice. I would go, you sign out of your cell and you go to Bible study and you sign out and you go to, yoga and you sign out and you go to all these things. And that's what you do with your time because you got nothing else to do. Yeah. But when you're out on the street, you got a job, and you got a parole officer, and you got school, and you got friends, and you got the internet. Oh my God, I got the internet. Oh my God, I got a cell phone. Oh, I'm crazy with pictures and videos and voice notes because they took away my ability to document life for years at a time. Now I'm addicted to it. I know, like all the time, right? So they took that all away from me, and when you're bombarded with it, it's like an overload and you forget the simple things. You forget the praying, you forget the meditating, you forget the researching, reading, engaging, relating with mind, body, spirit, with God. You forget breathing, you forget drinking water, you forget the simplest stuff that all compounds on top of you eventually until all falls down.
Yep.
So that was me in prison. Like, oh my God, I the first time I thought I could do it myself, the first time I thought I was smart, the first time I thought I was above all. And even though I was like firmly, I've got like a faith and I've got like all that sort of stuff going for me. At that point in time, I was like, I'm smart enough. I got this. You know what I mean? Like I'm a ninja. I could do whatever I want. Nobody will even know. I'm like not like untouchable. So that was pride and ego. And then the second time I go back into prison. I pick up my faith study again, this time without a release date. So I was devastated, you could imagine. Wow. I'm in that prison for a year. First one for a year and a half. Wow. Second one for a year. And I was so ridiculously devastated that I had to pour myself into something that would be firm. And it wasn't my future because I didn't have one. It wasn't my plans, because how can you make them? It wasn't my friends or my family or my career or my anything or my this or my that. It literally only could be my health and wellness and my relationship with spirit. Yeah. So here I am sitting there without a release date, and I'm literally like, I've researched all the different religions. I've chosen my faith in Christianity for myself, and I love all faiths, period, whatsoever. Yeah. But for myself, the language that I speak is in my Bible. Yeah. So I'm sitting here with 5 Bibles deep on my jail cell cot, my little thin bed.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there 5 Bibles deep on my little thin bed, and I'm like, you know, like, how dare you be so important to God, you know, like, how dare you be so important? I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I can run shit. Can I swear on this?
Yes, of course.
I can run shit. And so I'm like, I'm gonna disprove the Bible for myself. That's what I did. You can do whatever. Everybody goes through their own journey, but for myself, that's where it took me, because that's the only thing that I had to actively engage in, that was there, that was present, that was available, that I could get more information from, and that I could pour myself into. So at the end of that journey, when I got amazingly released from Court of Queen's Bench bail into the community on 24-hour house arrest, I'm like, oh my God, what did I forget? I forgot my spirituality.
Yeah. Yes.
So I went out and I was working and I was trying, but I failed.
Yeah.
And I got distracted, and I got swept up in success in the future and career and proving everybody wrong and responsibility and court dates and all that other stuff that I had to juggle.
Deal with,
and I didn't actually practice it. I had it. I had it in my mind. I had it in my heart. I had it in my soul, but I wasn't doing it with my hands and my feet. I wasn't out there practicing it like on a daily, regular basis.
Yep.
And so I went back to jail. and
at least we're laughing now, right?
3 times over. So get this. I'm a 3 times loser, and I'm sitting over here, a fairly good success and a winner, and you can too.
Of course.
If I can do that, you can do this.
Yes.
You can do whatever it is.
It goes with resiliency, right?
Absolutely.
And there is something that you mentioned that I can definitely relate that to what we're experiencing right now in the world. You didn't have a release date.
Yeah.
There is uncertainty.
Yeah.
And as you said, there's no planning. There is nothing. What are we experiencing right now?
I was literally like so at home with COVID. I'm like, wow. I'm like, partitions in between us and the people, stand on the dock, wait by the wall. You know what I mean? Everything was like, yeah, there you go.
So there is a lot.
Stay in your cell.
And I'm getting goosebumps as we speak, because there's a lot that we can learn from this experience, because it's not even too far from what we're experiencing right now.
I will tell you, this is prison.
Yes.
We're
of course
all in jail.
Totally. And you know what? And I like how you linked all that back to spirituality. In your case, it was Christianity, which is, and I love that you said that was the language that you could understand, that spoke to you, right? Because if somebody speaks Chinese to me, there's not gonna be there's no communication. Because
like me and an atheist having a combo.
Exactly. I can only understand in English and Spanish.
Right.
If anybody tries maybe French, I can figure something out. But it's figuring out. It's not gonna be like a fluent conversation where the message is gonna be clear, right?
Right.
So, but those are the things that are really, really important right now. And how do we deal with that? You already give us a little bit of it, which is faith, right?
Yeah.
And
action and physical action.
Totally, because and you know what? I'm gonna say something that it is, and I have been telling this to a lot of my friends that are very spiritual. And we're experiencing a very, very challenging times. This is not affecting just someone in Canada or Venezuela or someone in Ireland. It is the very first time that the whole planet
collective
it is
suffering
going through the same thing, right?
That's so true.
And so how can we deal with this?
You guys are all my cellmates this time.
Yay! I know.
I couldn't choose better cellmates
Yes,
to be with.
totally. And this is exactly what I have been preaching, right? It is, as much as we are living in our spiritual world, it's part of our growth, okay? We also need to take action, and we still need to show up in our material world. We can call it third dimension, material, action, anything we want to call that. We still need to show up with our body. And we need still to tell the world that we are in disagreement, right?
Voice it.
Yes. And which is going to
stand up and be heard.
Totally.
Oh, I've got a.
Okay, go for it. She got inspired.
You guys want to hear about standing up and being heard, or the consequences of not standing up and being heard? Because I have a real world example. Has a little bit to do with racism, so I'm sorry if it triggers anybody at all. But I'm Native. I'm 75% Soto from Cody's Reserve, and the other 25% of me is Dutch. But here I am, a girl. Misty Wind Shingoose is my whole entire name. That's a very classic Native name. And here I am in the prison system for my very first time, and I'm a non-violent offender. I'm dealing in narcotics, but I don't have like actual violence on my file. And so here oh my goodness, I just realized how bad the corruption is. But I'm sitting here, and my lawyer was like, okay, Misty, you got 4.5 years. He promised me 2. He's like, you got 4.5 years, but it's okay, because you're still going to get out in 6 months, because you qualify for something that in Canada is called fast track, which means that you are a nonviolent offender and you can get out in 6 months and then go into like a proper reintegration into society before you get institutionalized is what happens. You get institutionalized if you stay in prison for too many years, right? So here I am going to the prison, and the week before my dad passes away, well, I'm in jail, and I'm devastated. I'm broken. They didn't take me to the funeral. They promised me that they were going to, and they didn't. So I'm devastated. I show up at the prison once I got like moved. They literally drove me out of the jail, and I was expecting to go to Edmonton Institution for Women. In fact, I had everything all set up in Edmonton Institution for Women to continue dealing in narcotics in the prison system. And so I had all my stuff. I'm like, that was how I was going to deal with losing my dad. Go right back into what I knew, so I could cover it up and still feel successful, still have some sort of like control. So that's how I was compartmentalizing it and making sure that I was doing something to be in control. And here I am in the cab sedan, and they're taking me down from the Calgary Remand Center, and we get to Deerfoot, and we go south. And if any of you know anything from of Alberta, Canada, getting to Edmonton from Calgary is north on the Deerfoot. And we start heading south, and immediately, oh my God, what's going on? They were transferring me to a different institution. They were transferring me to a Native Healing Lodge, a minimum security institution, a minimum and medium, no, I think just minimum, I'm not sure. A minimum security mainly institution in the Cypress Hills of Saskatchewan called Okama-Ochi. And this is what the driver said. He goes, he didn't know this. The driver has no idea. He's just, oh, you're going to Medicine Hat. And I'm like, what? I'm sensitive because my dad just passed away. So I'm crying. I'm like, I don't understand. I have all these plans up at Edmonton. All these plans, you know, like they say when you say you're making plans, God laughs at you.
Yeah. That's a good one, I know.
And so they take me down to Medicine Hat, and I get picked up at Medicine Hat. And finally, the person who picks me up at Medicine Hat, after hours and hours and hours, tripping out in a cell. I'm tripping out. I think I literally am like, somebody used my name and I got new charges down here somehow because this happens a lot in the system. You go to court for charges that aren't yours.
Yes, I heard of stories like that.
And my name was common to like throw around, right? So I'm in Medicine Hat, and they come and pick me up, and then they're like, you're going to the Healing Lodge. And again, I break down in tears. Okay, fine. Fine. And I get there and they put me in like a secluded room for a week first. And I didn't like have to do anything or go any places because I was really, really upset. I was broken and I didn't have confidence.
Yeah.
I didn't have security. I didn't have my dad.
Yeah.
And so my first meeting with my parole officer, my institutional parole officer, pardon me, but my institutional parole officer, I say, okay, so my lawyer told me all about this fast track that I'm eligible for, right? I'm like, I should have like my release date in 6 months, right? And she's like, okay, well, yeah, I'll look into this. I'll get back to you. Mm-hmm. And that's what they do. That's what they do.
Yeah, it's a game. Right?
It is a game.
It is a game.
And I wasn't strong enough or confident enough to say, well, you better get back to me here. I was like, okay, yeah, get back to me. Let me know. And that turned into a whole entire year and 3 months.
Wow.
A year and 3 months later, she just said, oh, I'm still looking. Oh, I'm looking into it. Oh, I'm looking into it. Oh, I'm looking into it. A year and 3 months later, I have a new, I believe I have a new institutional parole officer. She comes and I asked somebody else's question anyways. Finally, it was like close to my mom's birthday and I really wanted to get out early. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to be out earlier.
Yeah.
And by now I'm the president of the inmate committee. I like run the fitness boot camp. I'm like in the Bible study club and I'm like doing all these amazing things. And so I have my confidence back. Mm-hmm. And I go to the parole officer again. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I want you to check on that fast track thing again. Yeah. A couple weeks later, she says, Misty, I'm so sorry. You were supposed to be out of jail last year. And so here I am. Okay. And in my heart, I felt, oh, I'm just another, like a Native girl screw up in the system, in prison, in Canada. In Canada, much like in the States, maybe if I was a Black girl or a Spanish girl in the States, in Canada, it's like I'm a Native girl in the system here. In my name on black and white really literally has less value, quite a bit less. So my suggestions, of course, go with a grain of salt. Nobody really takes them into account. So here I am, and I'm like, great. Yeah. System stole a whole entire year of my life. Yeah. So when you don't stand up, and you don't have that confidence, and you don't have that center, and you don't demand to be heard, the powers that be over you aren't perfect. Yeah. They are faulty too. They make mistakes too. And so we have to learn to take our power back. Yes. Stand up, be counted, and be heard. Yeah. And hold those above us accountable for their actions and their reactions and the rules and laws that they put over us. And if we don't do that, you'll lose a year of your life to Correction Service Canada like me. Yeah. Or even worse.
We're basically, if we don't stand up for ourselves, we're definitely right now, we're losing our freedom.
Absolutely, 100%.
Which is not too far from what we're talking about, right? Wow. And because in your case, it's a story of the past, right? Where there's a lot of lessons learned, and here you are. And however, we still need to stand up, no matter what, because it goes with what we believe, right? What we believe to be right for that moment. I'm just gonna say like that because things might change. However, when it comes to our rights as humanity, as human beings, that will never change. No. They're always the same. Yeah. And they're described.
The right to breathe air, the right to drink water, the right to
free will,
pray to a God of your understanding, the right to make a choice or a decision for yourself.
Yeah. All that stuff, it is part of our humanity, and nobody can take that no matter what. However, there are things that we do that they're not acceptable. I wouldn't say right or wrong, because I'm sure
acceptable.
They're not acceptable, exactly. Because you know what, I'm a huge believer of harmony. And I think we need to learn, and faith will give a lot of that, right? It would allow us to understand, to have more balance, right? And to trust. Sometimes, I was having a conversation with my best friend, and he's losing his patience, because this situation is affecting everybody at every level. Financially, spiritually, physically, you name it, right? Everybody's vulnerable in different ways. Because everybody is vulnerable in an area, right? And right now it is proving us
all the directions. So no matter what area that you're,
and if you have one area that is weak, that's where you're gonna get hurt, right? Whether it's financially, emotionally, mentally, physically, that is the area that is going to get triggered first, right? Or it's gonna be, or it feels that it's getting attacked first, right? But we need to learn to trust in some ways, as hard as it can
trust
be.
Ourselves,
right? Yeah. That we are capable, right? Like we can take our power back, because sometimes we get too caught up in taking control of things. And
I love micromanaging.
There you go. Oh my God.
I love being the boss.
I'm on the opposite end. I don't like micromanaging, because I'm like, I don't have time for that, right?
I know, it's such a bad love.
Bad love affair. But you see, those are the things that I need to work with people like you, right? Because I'm on the opposite end. Definitely, right? Yeah. It goes with balance. I'm not a detailed person, right? I need to work with people that are detailed oriented, because I'm like, I will do this and I'm fine, right? So those are the things that I really, really love. What do you think it's going to be? It could be the advice that you can give right now, and of course, I'm sure it's going to be useful for the rest of their life, right? To people about your lessons.
Well, how much time do we have? Because we haven't gotten into the philanthropy part, and I think that really ties into what your question is right there.
Okay, go for it.
Because when I got out of prison and I found that mentor, that mentor inspired me to use my life, my story, and my career path. So whatever your career path happens to be, my life, my story, my career path, to give back to the community. So I think a year and a half out of prison, I was building a nonprofit, doing haircuts for the homeless down on the streets of Calgary. I did it for 4.5 years, almost 5 years. And that was what kept me accountable. So I had a person at first. I had somebody look up to. I had a mentor. I had somebody that I loved and would be hurt if I hurt them and lost them. But you can't rely on that, because that's unhealthy. So then I took this person's advice, and I created myself a project. A project around my story, using my weaknesses and utilizing my strengths, and affecting the people in the community around me for the good, with all those ingredients. So we did haircuts for, as I said, almost half a decade. I involved all of my community with me, and people were like giving me clothing donations, because we did food, clothing, haircuts, and church. If anybody wanted to come with us to church after a haircuts event, we did an evening church service at Kensington Commons in Calgary here, and they welcomed us and every homeless individual who ever came with us with open, loving arms, and it was beautiful and amazing. And that was what kept me on track, because I'm like ADD, ADHD, like high, super performer, organizer, all that sort of stuff. If I'm not doing something, I'm getting in trouble. If I'm not doing 10 things.
Well, and I guess also it's part of the fear, right?
Right.
Of, you know what,
busy.
I don't
And
want
not being able to pause with yourself
Yes.
and not get into trouble. Now this is where I am now. So that's beautiful.
Yes.
But I had to go through
Yes.
these other
Mm-hmm.
actions first to get myself to this place where now I can sit, I can be still, and I'm okay.
Yep.
Finally.
Yep. Yeah,
for once in my life.
Definitely.
But
and you know, you're touching into something that is really important, which is being at service.
yes,
Okay.
serving others. That was where
and that's very
found
fulfilling,
my heart.
right? Because
It also broke my heart a million times over.
oh, I'm sure, because I'm sure, right?
But you have to know that life isn't perfect, and even if you're like trying to save the world, you're gonna fail, or people will fail you, or you'll fail them, or whatever will happen, and you start strengthening your muscle of reacting and coping.
Yes.
Instead of reacting explosively and all of a sudden and like blowing everything up, and now you got to pick up the pieces that you've exploded. You start like pausing, holding, waiting on the emotion and not reacting, and coping in ways of like breathing, praying, meditating, drinking water, eating your vegetables, like just pausing, spending time with, you know, at the dog park with dogs that make you smile, or getting a puppy, or whatever the case might be. You learn new coping mechanisms, strategies that you have to replace, because those neuron paths in your mind that are formed, that your mind automatically reverts to every single time, because that's what you've done your whole entire life. You literally need to put a physical block there, and revert and redirect that flow through your mind. You have to redirect the sparks of energy in your mind going through your neurons, and form these new pathways. And you're not going to be able to do it once. Oh, this is lovely, because this is what I like talking about, is the brain synapse map in everybody's brain is individual. We all have had our own experiences which have created our thoughts, which makes our maps like individual. So when a brain synapse happens and then you revert to that over and over and over again, it's like more than one wire. So you got a neuron and a neuron. This neuron has 1 to 4 actions on it, and then on the 1 to 4 actions, there's on the neuron, there's up to 400,000 dendrites, little dendrites hanging off of it. So each of these has that, you know, an action and a bunch of dendrites. So what happens is the dendrite hooks to an action, and that's a thought. And then it goes into a trail of all the other ones. And so when a dendrite hooks to an action, and then it becomes a habit, another dendrite hooks to it, and another dendrite hooks to it. There's anywhere between 400,000 dendrites per neuron. So you can literally have an experience happen to you 400,000 times and react the same way. And now that's like a solid connection, like a massive thing. So how I visualize it for people is it's like a fiber optic cable. If you've seen fiber optic cables, like on the internet, of like the pictures of it, it's like a cable, and it's got all these tiny little cables inside of it, and each of those cables is a connection of what you've done before. This is your habit. This is how you cope. This is how you react. This is how you act. So this cable is your habit. And in order to start flowing from this cable into another cable, you have to take I visualize it like a tiny little axe. You got a tiny little axe and you're chopping into it. When you chop into it with an axe, by stopping, not engaging, and pausing, you got the chop. You're only chopping one of those tiny little cables in there every single time. Chink, bing, 1. Chink, bing, 2. Chink, bing, 3. 40,000 times up to, you know what I mean? However many times you've reverted into that line of thought and pattern. So that's 40,000 failures or 400,000 failures. And you have to be willing to accept those failures and continue on trying again and again and again and again and again until that new path has more connections to it, and you automatically revert into that. It's human body.
Definitely. And you know, I gotta say, I'm one of the few people, I'm normally very, and I learned that from my grandma. I always talk about her, but it is, I'm always being quite determined. When I need to change something, I just go and change it.
Yeah,
right?
strong-willed. I'm the
Normally,
same.
normally, I'm not saying that I never got caught up in crap, okay? Because I'm still, a
Work in
human
progress.
being, and I still have the same neurons and all those connections anyway, right? Like, so, but in that case, I normally have a very strong, like, will, as you said, where when I'm going to do something, I just go and do it, which is the 5-second rule works perfect for that, right? Because when you think of something, just count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, and do it, right? As simple as that, instead of wondering, because we get caught up in all that stuff. And
that does two things. One, that stops you from your initial reaction.
Yes.
And then two, it forces you to still take an action, but you have to think about the action first.
Yes. But you bring more consciousness to at that point, right?
Yes.
So you're allowing yourself to be aware of what needs to happen. So that's really, really key. And I love, I gotta say that for me, there are a few things I'm learning from you. And I mean, it's how faith can help in times of uncertainty.
So much.
Right? And belief and trust and take back your power, because it goes all that stuff. In time of uncertainty, it is a time that you go back to spirituality, get your power back, okay? And it's time to stand up for yourself as well. Like, those are the things that are really, really key when we are in uncertain times, and which I'm sure all of us have been in that situation at some point in our life. And I'm going to give 2 examples, so then people don't think that it only happens when you go to jail, right? It's when as an immigrant, there is a lot of uncertainty. You're going to, like, I came to a new country, new language, and there's nothing, like, when we're looking at plan, I didn't know what plan to make, because I didn't even know where I was getting myself into, even though that in the embassy, they give you a lot of paperwork, so then you know kind of how things are. But all the paperwork is very crappy, by the way.
Yeah, reading is completely different from experiencing.
Totally, right? And another example that I find where uncertainty it happens, it is when you have a baby. Like, you have a baby, and I'm saying uncertainty because now that my kids are older, I have have 18-year-old, 15 and 13. And I'm saying uncertainties because definitely all through that journey is uncertain. It's and I always say I have
so many unknown variables.
Oh, believe me, I have to become, and I realized that recently, like 3 moms, right? Because the way how I behave and I acted with my oldest is not the same as my middle one. Is not the same as my youngest.
Yeah.
So, and that is something that I never thought it will be. Now I'm more prepared to that uncertain times that are coming, because 3 freaking teenagers, I'm telling you, and that is, we all hope for the best. We all wish that we are all going to have an amazing future, right? Is successful, but there is an uncertainty in life that we cannot control as much as we want to, plan, right? Because we can plan all we want. And life happens. Life throws you things at you, and if you're not prepared, if faith is gonna hold you, strong in that place, and being, what I would say is we always need to be prepared to the unknown, to that uncertainty.
Yeah.
To
if you expect life to be perfect, you will be sorely disappointed.
Totally.
And probably offended.
Totally, right? And which is,
I'm offended they took my year away in jail, Like,
totally, right? But
I had the power to do something about it. I just didn't take that power.
Yes. Yes, and that is key. A lot of
Lessons.
things, yeah, totally, and a lot of things that we are experiencing today, and I would say women in general, because part of the women liberation, it is about getting our power back.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been. However, I personally believe we're going way too far to the other end, which is that whole pendulum effect. That it is about balance. It is not about
overpowering
or emasculating men.
Yeah, no. We want to support our men.
Balance.
We want to, as we rise up, we want to lift our men up above us. Whether they're actually above us or not, we want to do that.
Yeah, but it's exactly. So it is all about elevating, which is, you know, and I personally believe that's part of our evolution and our growth, because we have been going through history, and this is thousands of years in our history, how things we have been going on that pendulum back and forth. And but I definitely believe that after any crisis, there is always, you know, there's hope, there's always positive. It's like all the Marvel movies, right?
This brings me to a good semi-closing spot. But I once wrote in a book about my life story, a very, very brief, quick life story in a book. It's entitled "I Am a Brilliant Woman," and the author is Karen Klassen.
Yeah.
And it was my chapter and then 9 other women's chapters.
Yeah.
So 10 of us writing our life stories in the book. Now, in this book, I wrote a quote that God gave me when I was in prison the very last time. So that third time of my 3 times over screwing it up in life phase. And I'm sitting there and I was like, man, in life, like before I was in prison, I was like a millionaire. I was a street millionaire.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm so hood rich that I'm no good, bitch. Anyways, so I was like, man, I was like a millionaire. And then I lost it all. I went to jail.
Yeah.
And then I came out and I was like crawling up. I'm like, boom, I'm a millionaire again. I have a 2-floor penthouse condo. I got all these cars. I'm super dope. I've like got everything. And then boom, back in jail. And it was worse than before. So I was like up. And then I was like down, equal and opposite. And then I was up a little higher. And then I was like down, equal and opposite, down a little further.
Yeah.
And then I got out and now I'm like, oh, legit up. So I'm like got a career, doing really good. And then I was like down even way further. I didn't get into any of the particulars about how bad that last time in prison was and why, but I was really, really low. And in that spot, in that lowest low spot right there of my life, God said, Misty, write this down. So I did. Because I listened to him now.
Oh, yay.
He said, write this down. He said, the depths of despair one can sink to in life are equal and opposite to the heights of greatness one can ascend to. And I look back and I was like, yep, check. So I'm sitting here in my lowest low. And instead of being like, oh, poor me, oh, this sucks, oh, victim mode, oh, all this crap, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for what's next.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, learning my lessons, getting ready, because I know it's like bing, bing. And sure enough, within 2 days of being released from prison, I was like, all the most beautiful things in the world. Within 4 days of being out of prison, I gave Maher a vision of this yesterday because I had it on my phone. I'm like, Maher, I got out of prison and I was so overwhelmed at the beauty because I knew that I had changed and I had dedicated myself and I was ready now. Yeah. And the way that the universe was for me in those first 48 hours and the first, week was just like overwhelmingly beautiful. I was invited to this house in Vancouver at Point Grey Road. One of my brothers out there, one of my street brothers, one of my jail brothers, he invited me to this dinner with his new girlfriend, who's a pianist, and there's a couple other piano players there, and the guy has a mansion and coming over for dinner, and I'm like, oh my goodness, mansion dinner, how fun. I'm like, I just got out of the pen. So I go over to this mansion for dinner, And the guy owns Fila, the sportswear company. He just sold it. So he sold the rights to Fila, but he's an Italian gentleman, a dear friend of mine, Alex. And he sold the rights to Fila, and he's having us over for dinner. And I'm there with my girlfriend, and I have this video on my Instagram, and I'm going, hey everybody, and I'm showing everybody on the camera, oh, there's my brother, there's his girlfriend, there's Alex, there's my girlfriend, and then there's the most beautiful view that you've ever seen from Point Grey Road, from a mansion in the world of Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, the ocean, everything, right? And then there's a park at the end of my video. And I said, Maher, 3 years prior, I stood at that park beside a person who 2 years after that kidnapped me for 2 days. Beat me, raped me. I went through a bunch of stuff with that person. But I sat at that park with that person 3 years earlier, and we were smoking a joint. And I looked up at that house and I said, you know, one day I'm going to stand in that house and see that view. I said that to him. And I'm in this house at this beautiful dinner, and I'm crying from happiness and overwhelmingness of the universe, of God's blessing, of love and like beauty and like overwhelm. Like literally, I didn't think that was a prayer. That wasn't a prayer. I was just like talking shit. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that house is cool. I'm going to stand in there one day. And I'm standing in the living room window of that house that I looked at 3 years earlier. Enjoying a beautiful dinner with my beautiful friends and family. And I've got a multitude of stories similar to that, but that one just really, really embodies what happens when you go all in. It really, really shows you the blessings you get when you submit to God, and the God inside of yourself, by the way, and then you actively do the actions of integrating that into your life.
That is a beautiful closing already. Like I gotta say, I'm getting goosebumps all the way.
So awesome. I still know him and see him. He's just a sweetheart.
You know what? And it's definitely, this is a very, very nice introduction to the wonders that you can hear on her podcast.
Yes.
And please follow her.
Misty Wings. Black Sheep, White Wings is the podcast, because I'm a black sheep, and somehow I managed to sprout some wings along the way, as I hope we all do. And mistywin.com to stay updated on all the other stuff.
Perfect. So thank you very much. This is wonderful. And you know what? Of course, we get a hug. This is wonderful. I really feel super, super blessed and happy to be able to bring these amazing people to my show, because a lot of us focus on bringing like superstars and celebrities, and we forget that we are all normal people in life, and we all have stories to share that is going to elevate each one of us, because at the end of the day, it's about elevating the vibration of our planet. Absolutely. And so please follow me on Instagram under dmago happy naked. Facebook, you can find me under dmago happy naked, and also Naked Fit for all the fitness online programs. And then you can look on my website, www.nakedfit.online/home, and you can find all sort of information. And of course, you can go to Amazon and you can find my book as well, and you can find my journal, which is part of creating a healthy lifestyle as well.
All the things.
It's all about tracking, right? Like it's part of taking action, which is what Misty was sharing. And I find that journaling and tracking what you eat, what you drink, your successes, your gratitude, it is really important, because it allows you to become aware of all those little things that Misty was sharing that are really important in life, and we have the tendency to forget about them. So thank you very much, and stay tuned, and please follow us, because there's so many wonderful things that are coming up. Bye-bye.